You know that moment when your body just gives up? When everything you've been holding together finally snaps? That's where I was, face down on the cold linoleum of the Sunrise Manor dining room, my scrambled eggs scattered across the floor like my dignity. The fluorescent lights above me buzzed like angry wasps, burning my eyes as I tried to focus on anything but the sharp pain shooting through my chest. The staff came rushing over, their voices muffled and distant like I was underwater. "Are you okay? Can you hear me? Don't try to move." But I could barely process their words through the fog of panic and pain. All I could think about was the irony. Here I was, surrounded by people who barely knew me, and they cared more in that moment than the person I'd given my entire life to. "Who should we call?" the nurse asked, her face hovering over mine like a concerned angel. Without hesitation, I whispered my daughter's name. "Sarah. My baby girl. My only child. The one person in this world who should drop everything when her mother collapses. The one person who should be racing here with tears in her eyes, promising everything would be okay." I expected my phone to ring within minutes. I expected to see her burst through those glass doors, probably still in her pajamas, demanding to know what happened and how she could help. I expected comfort. I expected love. I expected what any parent would expect from their child. It never came. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, my mind drifted back 23 years. Sarah was 8, standing in our tiny kitchen in her school uniform, navy blue jumper with a white collared shirt that I'd ironed the night before. I can still smell that fresh, clean scent of fabric softener mixed with the lavender dryer sheets I splurged on because I wanted her to feel special, even though money was tight. I was a single mother then, working double shifts at the diner just to keep us afloat. My ex-husband had vanished the moment parenthood got real, leaving me with a toddler and a mountain of bills. But every morning, I'd get up at 5:30 to press that little uniform until it was perfect. I'd braid her hair just right, pack her lunch with a handwritten note, and walk her to the bus stop even when my feet ached from standing all day. "Mommy," she'd say, adjusting her backpack straps, "will you be here when I get home?" "Always, baby," I'd promise. And I was. Every single day. Through skinned knees and broken friendships, through homework tears and teenage tantrums. I was her constant, her safe place, her everything. The ambulance doors slammed shut, pulling me back to the present. The siren wailed as we sped through familiar streets, and I watched my world blur by through the small window. How did I end up here? How did the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms become someone who doesn't even answer her phone when her mother is dying? Listen, I need to pause here for a second. If you're watching this, wherever you are in the world, I want you to do something for me. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Are you in your kitchen making coffee? Lying in bed scrolling through your phone? Sitting in your car on a lunch break? I need to know I'm not talking to empty space. I need to know there are real people out there who understand what it feels like to love someone so completely that you lose yourself in the process. And if this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt forgotten by someone you die for, please hit that like button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because what I'm about to tell you gets so much worse before it gets better. St. Mary's General Hospital. Where hope goes to die under fluorescent lights and the constant beeping of machines that cost more than my first car. They wheeled me into room 314, a sterile box with mint green walls that probably seemed cheerful to whoever picked the paint, but felt more like a prison cell to me. The chaos was overwhelming. Nurses checking vitals, doctors asking questions I could barely answer through the oxygen mask, technicians wheeling in equipment that beeped and hummed like some sort of medical orchestra. But beneath all that noise was something much louder: silence. The deafening silence of a phone that should have been ringing. I kept staring at that black screen, willing it to light up with Sarah's name. Maybe she was in a meeting. Maybe she had her phone on silent. Maybe she was rushing here right now, stuck in traffic, panicking about her mom. I made excuse after excuse because the alternative, that she simply didn't care, was too painful to accept. You want to know the really twisted part? This wasn't the first time she'd gone radio silent. It used to be different. When she first moved away for college, she'd call every Sunday like clockwork. We'd talk for hours about her classes, her friends, her dreams. She'd ask about my work, my health, what I was watching on TV. Those calls were the highlight of my week. But then real life crept in. She graduated, got a job, met Daniel. The Sunday calls became every other week, then monthly, then only on holidays. I told myself it was natural. Children grow up, they get busy, they build their own lives. That's what good parents want, right? For their kids to be independent? The visits home became shorter and more strained. She'd spend most of the time on her phone or making plans with old friends. When I'd suggest we cook dinner together or watch a movie like we used to, she'd sigh and say, "Mom, I'm only here for 2 days. I need to see everyone." Everyone except me, apparently. I started planning elaborate weekends for her visits, her favorite meals, activities she used to love, photo albums to look through together. But she'd pick at the food I spent hours preparing, complain about being bored, and spend more time scrolling social media than talking to me. Later, Mom, became her favorite phrase. Later we'll catch up. Later we'll look at those pictures. Later we'll have a real conversation. Later never came. By day 2 in the hospital, I was desperate. My phone had become an extension of my hand, checking it every few minutes for any sign that Sarah knew where I was. The nurses kept asking if they should call her again, but I was too embarrassed to admit that my only child couldn't be bothered to check on her mother. That's when I made the mistake of opening Instagram. There it was, posted 12 hours ago, right around the time they'd moved me from the emergency room to the cardiac unit. A photo of Sarah, Daniel, and my 2 grandchildren at some upscale restaurant, all smiles and fancy cocktails. The kids were dressed up like it was a special occasion, probably cost more than I spend on groceries in a month. The caption hit me like a physical blow. Sometimes the best family time happens when you remove the toxic energy from your life. #blessed, #family time, #peace. Toxic energy. That's what I was to my daughter. The woman who worked 3 jobs to pay for her college. The woman who co-signed her car loan and helped with the down payment on her house. The woman who babysat those same grandchildren every weekend for the first 2 years of their lives so she and Daniel could have date nights and couple time. I stared at that post until my eyes burned. The timestamp showed it was posted at 8:47 p.m., exactly when the doctors were running tests to see if I'd had a heart attack. While I was lying in a hospital bed wondering if I was going to die alone, my daughter was celebrating her peaceful family time without me. The comments made it worse. Friends and relatives praising her for setting boundaries and choosing her mental health. Her mother-in-law wrote, "You deserve all the happiness, sweetie. Some people will never change." Some people. Me. I was some people. That night, I lay in that narrow hospital bed listening to the woman in the next bed snore and the endless beeping of machines, and I tried to figure out where I went wrong. Was I too needy? Did I call too often? Did I ask for too much when I suggested we have dinner once a month? I thought about all the times I'd bitten my tongue when Sarah would complain about her job, her marriage, her kids. How I'd listen for hours to her problems, but the moment I tried to share something about my own life, she'd suddenly have to go. I thought about the birthday cards I'd send that went unacknowledged, the Christmas gifts that were never mentioned, the photos of the grandkids that I'd treasure while she treated them like obligations. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was this clingy, suffocating mother who couldn't let go. Maybe everything she said about me was true, and I was just too blind to see it. But then I'd remember ironing those little uniforms. I'd remember sitting up all night when she had the flu, holding a cool washcloth to her forehead. I'd remember working Christmas Eve at the diner so I could afford the bike she wanted, then staying up until 3 a.m. assembling it because she believed in Santa. Where was that little girl now? The one who used to make me Mother's Day cards from construction paper and glitter? The one who said I was her best friend and her hero? When did loving her become toxic? When did wanting to be part of her life become suffocating? Other rooms had visitors. I could hear them in the hallways, adult children bringing flowers, grandparents reading to little ones, families gathering around bedsides with worried faces and gentle voices. I had none of that. Just me, my silent phone, and the growing realization that I meant nothing to the person who meant everything to me. The next morning brought fresh flowers to every room but mine. I watched through my door as delivery people wheeled cart after cart down the hallway, roses, lilies, elaborate arrangements that probably cost more than my Social Security check. The woman next to me got a huge bouquet from her son who lived in California. He sends these every time I'm in the hospital, she bragged to anyone who would listen. I kept checking my phone, even though I knew it was pointless. Maybe Sarah would surprise me. Maybe she'd walk in with flowers and tears and apologies, explaining that she'd been out of town or her phone was broken or there was some perfectly reasonable explanation for why she hadn't contacted me. But deep down, I was starting to see a pattern I'd been ignoring for years. It wasn't just the hospital. It was everything. When I'd text her photos of the sunset from my care home window, she'd respond with a thumbs-up emoji, if she responded at all. When I'd share news about my day or ask about the kids, I'd get one-word answers hours later. But when she needed something, money for a car repair, babysitting for a weekend getaway, someone to listen to her complain about her boss, suddenly I was important again. I started scrolling through our text history, and what I saw made me sick. Page after page of me sending long, loving messages, "Hope you're having a wonderful day, sweetheart. The weather is beautiful here. Mrs. Patterson from down the hall asked about you. She remembers when you used to help me with the garden when you were little. Love you so much." Her response, K. Me, saw the cutest outfit for Emma at the store today. Made me think of when you were that age and insisted on wearing tutus to the grocery store. You were such a character. How is she doing with her new teacher? Her response, fine. Me, I know you're busy, but I'd love to hear your voice sometime. Maybe we could do a video call so I can see the kids? It's been 3 months since we talked properly. Her response, maybe later. Later. Always later. Never now, never today, never when it mattered to me. Then, on day 5, everything changed. I was picking at the rubbery scrambled eggs they called breakfast when my phone started buzzing like an angry hornet. Call after call from Sarah's number, lighting up my screen like a Christmas tree. My heart hammered against my ribs as I grabbed the phone with shaking hands. Finally, she'd realized something was wrong. Maybe the care home had tracked her down. Maybe Daniel had seen the hospital on the caller ID. Maybe she'd had some maternal instinct kick in and known I needed her. Mom? MOM. Where the hell are you? Her voice was frantic, borderline hysterical. Sarah? Oh, sweetheart, I've been calling the house for hours. Mrs. Jenkins next door said you weren't there, that there was some kind of emergency. What's going on? Where are you? The relief flooding through me was so intense I almost started crying. She did care. She was worried. She was my daughter again, not this cold stranger who'd been treating me like an inconvenience. I'm at St. Mary's Hospital, honey. I collapsed at the care home 5 days ago. I've been trying to reach you, but... 5 days? Why didn't you call me? I did call you. The staff called you. We left messages. I haven't gotten any messages. My phone's been crazy this week with everything going on. Listen, Mom, this is really bad timing. I need your help with something urgent. And there it was. Not, are you okay? Not, what happened? Not, I'm on my way. Just that she needed my help with something urgent. Sarah, I almost died. I'm still in the hospital. The doctors aren't sure. Mom, I need you to listen to me. Daniel's business partner screwed us over. He embezzled everything and disappeared. The FBI is involved. We're about to lose the house, the cars, everything. I need you to wire me some money today, like right now, or we're going to be on the street. The world tilted sideways. Here I was, lying in a hospital bed after the scariest week of my life, and she was asking for money. Not offering comfort, not expressing concern, not even acknowledging that I'd been through hell. Just demanding money. How much? I heard myself ask, even though my heart was breaking. 20,000. I know it's a lot, but I'll pay you back as soon as the insurance sorts this out. Please, Mom. The kids don't understand what's happening. Emma keeps asking why Daddy is crying. I can't lose our house. $20,000. Almost half of my life savings. The money I'd been carefully hoarding in case I needed long-term care or had medical expenses that Medicare wouldn't cover. The money that was supposed to give me dignity in my final years. Sarah, I need to think about this. I'm in the hospital, Anne. There's no time to think. The bank is going to foreclose on Friday. It's Wednesday. Mom, please, you're the only person who can help us. You're my mother. Isn't that what mothers do? Isn't that what mothers do? Like I hadn't been doing it her entire life. Like I hadn't sacrificed everything for her from the moment she was born. Like this was somehow my obligation, not her emergency. I'll call you back, I whispered and hung up. Something about that call felt wrong beyond just the terrible timing. Sarah had seemed genuinely surprised that I was in the hospital, but also strangely focused on her own crisis. And why hadn't she gotten any of our messages? Her phone was clearly working fine. I asked the nurse for a laptop, claiming I needed to check on some financial matters. What I really wanted was to do some digging. If Sarah was in as much trouble as she claimed, there would be signs. 20 minutes later, I found them. Daniel's business partner, Mark Chen, was very much not missing. His LinkedIn showed he was actively posting about new clients and successful deals. His company's website was updated as recently as yesterday. If there had been any embezzlement or FBI investigation, it wasn't making the local news sites where their business was prominently featured. But that wasn't the worst discovery. When I logged into my bank account, the same account Sarah had access to as my emergency contact and backup for health-related expenses, I found a pattern that made my blood run cold. Withdrawal after withdrawal, going back 8 months. Always on odd dates, never round numbers, always just under the limit that would require additional authorization. $847 here, $1,234 there, $692 the week before. Small enough amounts that I wouldn't notice immediately, but large enough to add up. I scrolled through my statements with growing horror. Over $15,000, taken in dribs and drabs over the better part of a year. Every few weeks, like clockwork, money would disappear from my account. The dates told their own story. Right after I'd mentioned needing a new winter coat or worry about my car needing repairs, suddenly there'd be a withdrawal. When I'd told her about the care home raising their fees and how I was stressed about making ends meet, $500 vanished 3 days later. She'd been stealing from me. While I was lying awake at night worrying about money, while I was eating generic cereal and skipping meals to save on groceries, while I was wearing the same 3 sweaters all winter because I couldn't afford new clothes, my daughter was systematically draining my accounts. The $20,000 she was demanding wasn't a loan. It was just a bigger, more direct theft because whatever crisis she was facing required more than she could slowly siphon away. I stared at that laptop screen until my vision blurred, not from tears but from rage. Pure, white-hot fury that I hadn't felt since I was a young mother fighting for every scrap of dignity and security for my child. How dare she? How dare she sit there in her expensive restaurant, posting about toxic energy and family peace, while stealing my grocery money? How dare she ignore my calls when I was dying, then panic dial me the moment she needed something? How dare she treat me like a bank account with legs, something to withdraw from when convenient and ignore when not? I called my bank right there from my hospital bed. I need to remove someone from my account immediately, I told the representative. Sarah Mitchell. Yes, I know she's been on there for years. Yes, I'm sure. Yes, this is an emergency. It took 20 minutes and 3 different people, but finally it was done. Sarah no longer had access to my money. Every account, every savings bond, every investment, locked away from her grasping fingers. Then I called my lawyer. Margaret Henley had handled my will and estate planning for 15 years. She knew Sarah, had watched her grow up, had probably expected to help transfer my assets to her when the time came. But she was also a smart woman who'd seen enough family drama to know trouble when she heard it. I need to change my will, I told her. Completely. Everything that was going to Sarah needs to go somewhere else. Are you sure about this? You're in the hospital, you're emotional. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. My phone started ringing again within hours. Sarah had tried to make a withdrawal and been denied. The texts started pouring in, first panicked, then angry, then downright vicious. What did you do? I can't access the account. Mom, this isn't a game. We're going to lose everything. You're being selfish and cruel. What kind of mother abandons her children? Danielle says this is elder abuse in reverse. You're punishing your own family. The voicemails were even worse. Sarah's voice, shrill and desperate, calling me names I'd never heard from her lips. Accusing me of being manipulative, vindictive, crazy. Her husband got on the phone at one point and told me exactly what he thought of me, using language that would make a sailor blush. But something strange was happening. Instead of breaking my heart like it should have, instead of making me want to fix everything and make peace, their anger was clarifying. Every cruel word they spat at me just confirmed what I was beginning to understand: they didn't love me. They loved my money. When Sarah was sweet and caring, it was because she needed something. When she ignored my calls, it was because she'd gotten what she wanted. When she posted about toxic family members, she was talking about the woman who'd given her life meaning and purpose. I wasn't her mother. I was her ATM. 3 weeks later, back in my room at Sunrise Manor, I received a handwritten letter. Real paper, real ink, Sarah's familiar handwriting that I'd helped her perfect through years of homework battles. Dear Mom, it began, and for just a moment, my heart softened. I owe you an apology. I've been going through a really hard time, and I took it out on you in ways that weren't fair. You didn't deserve those things. I said, and neither did you deserve to be left alone in the hospital. I know I haven't been the daughter you raised me to be. I know I've been distant and difficult and maybe not as grateful as I should have been for everything you've done for me. I've been so caught up in my own problems that I forgot about the woman who sacrificed everything to make sure I had a good life. I'm asking for another chance. I want to be better, do better, love better. I want my kids to know their grandmother, and I want us to have the relationship we used to have. I know I've hurt you, and I know words aren't enough, but I'm hoping you can find it in your heart to forgive me. I love you, Mom. I've always loved you, even when I was too stupid and selfish to show it properly. I read that letter 3 times, sitting in my favorite chair by the window overlooking the garden. Part of me wanted to cry with relief. Part of me wanted to call her immediately and tell her all was forgiven. But mostly, I felt nothing. For years, I'd dreamed of hearing those words from her. I'd imagined the moment when she'd finally realize how much I'd done for her, how much I loved her, how wrong she'd been to treat me like an inconvenience. I'd fantasized about her apology, her regret, her promise to do better. But now that it was here, it felt hollow. Because I knew something I hadn't known when I'd started dreaming of this moment, I didn't need it anymore. You know what's funny? The day I got that letter, Mrs. Patterson from down the hall gave me a small succulent plant. Nothing fancy, just a little jade plant in a simple clay pot. For your windowsill, she said. They're practically indestructible, but they'll thrive if you take care of them. I almost threw it away. What did I need with another responsibility, another living thing depending on me? But something about its sturdy little leaves and the way it seemed so self-sufficient appealed to me. I put it on my windowsill and forgot about it for a few days. When I remembered to water it, the soil was bone dry, but the plant looked exactly the same. Unbothered. Patient. Still green and healthy despite my neglect. So different from the needy, dramatic flowers I used to buy for my room, roses that wilted after a week, tulips that drooped if I forgot to change their water daily. This little plant asked for almost nothing and gave back exactly what it received. Water it, and it would grow. Ignore it, and it would wait. It didn't manipulate or guilt me into caring for it. It simply existed, quietly getting stronger every day. I started talking to it during my morning routine. Nothing dramatic, just little observations about the weather or my plans for the day. Unlike Sarah, it never interrupted or changed the subject. It never made me feel boring or needy for wanting to share my thoughts. And slowly, day by day, it grew. New leaves appeared, tiny and perfect. The plant became stronger, more vibrant, more beautiful. Not because it demanded attention or threw tantrums when ignored, but because it was receiving steady, consistent care. That's when I realized what I'd been doing wrong for years. I'd been trying to force love from Sarah the way some people force blooms from plants, with too much water, too much fertilizer, too much desperate attention. I'd been killing our relationship with my need for it to be something it wasn't. This little jade plant was teaching me something Sarah never had. Sometimes the most beautiful growth happens when you stop trying so hard. My days at Sunrise Manor took on a different quality after that. Instead of spending my mornings checking my phone for messages that never came, I'd water my plant and eat breakfast with Mrs. Patterson and Frank from room 237. We'd complain about the coffee and gossip about the night staff and debate whether the scrambled eggs were actually eggs or some kind of plastic substitute. It sounds boring, but it wasn't. It was peaceful. These people weren't trying to get anything from me except my company. They laughed at my jokes, listened to my stories, and shared their own without keeping score of who talked more or who was more interesting. I started joining the book club that met every Tuesday evening. We were reading mysteries mostly, cheap paperbacks with dramatic covers that the local library donated. Nothing profound or life-changing, just entertainment that we could discuss and argue about and enjoy together. The arguments were the best part. Frank thought every butler was guilty. Mrs. Patterson always suspected the victim's best friend. I had a theory that the least obvious suspect was usually the killer. We'd debate motives and clues and red herrings like our lives depended on solving fictional crimes. When had I last felt that engaged with Sarah? When had we last disagreed about something as trivial as a book plot without it turning into a fight about my being too needy or her being too busy? I couldn't remember. Thursday afternoons became game day. Scrabble, mostly, though sometimes we'd play Uno or Bridge if we could find a fourth player. I was surprisingly good at Scrabble, probably from all those years of helping Sarah with her vocabulary homework. I'd find satisfaction in playing a 7-letter word across a triple-word score, listening to Frank grumble about my showing off. These people celebrated my small victories without feeling threatened by them. When I won a game, they'd congratulate me and demand a rematch. When they won, I'd genuinely enjoy their happiness without feeling diminished by it. Sarah had never been able to do that. Even as a child, if I was good at something, she'd find a way to make it about her. If I mentioned enjoying a book, she'd tell me about a better book she was reading. If I shared excitement about a small accomplishment, she'd redirect the conversation to her own achievements. I'd thought that was normal. I'd thought that was just how families worked, everyone competing for attention and validation. But these strangers were showing me something different. What it felt like to be valued for yourself, not for what you could provide. 6 weeks after Sarah's letter, a new resident moved into the room across from mine. Eleanor Walsh, 83 years old, former librarian, completely lost and terrified. Her daughter had dropped her off with 2 suitcases and a box of photographs, promising to visit soon but looking relieved to escape. I recognized that look. The same expression Sarah wore when leaving my house after obligatory visits, like she was finally free from some burden. Eleanor spent her first 3 days crying. Soft, heartbroken sobs that drifted through the thin walls and reminded me of my own early days here. The staff was kind but busy. Other residents gave her space, figuring she needed time to adjust. But I remembered how desperately I'd wanted someone to care during those first awful days when I'd realized Sarah wasn't coming to rescue me. I remembered feeling abandoned and forgotten and utterly alone. So I knocked on Eleanor's door with a cup of tea and my jade plant. "I thought you might like some company," I said. "And this little guy needs more sunlight than my room gets. Your window faces east." Eleanor looked terrible. Red-eyed, gray-haired, wearing the same clothes she'd been dropped off in. But she let me in, and we sat together while she told me about the life she'd left behind. She'd been living with her daughter's family for 2 years after a stroke left her unsteady on her feet. At first, it had seemed like a good arrangement. She could help with the grandchildren, contribute to household expenses, be part of a family again after her husband died. But slowly, she'd become more burden than blessing. The grandchildren grew tired of her stories. Her daughter grew impatient with her slower pace. Her son-in-law made jokes about having 3 kids in the house instead of 2. They never said anything mean, Eleanor told me, holding the teacup like a lifeline. They were always polite. But I could feel it, you know? The way they'd sigh when I asked for help. The way they'd talk around me instead of to me. The way they'd light up when I said I was going to bed early, like they could finally relax. I knew. God, how I knew. The last straw was when I fell in their bathroom, she continued. Nothing serious, just slipped getting out of the shower. But the way my daughter looked at me, like I'd done it on purpose to inconvenience her. Like I was this fragile thing that was going to break their perfect life. We talked for hours that first day. About children who loved you but couldn't stand you. About becoming invisible in your own family. About the particular pain of being treated like a duty instead of a person. Eleanor moved my jade plant to her windowsill, and I started visiting her every morning. We'd check on the plant together, it was thriving in the morning light, and plan our days. Small things, which book club selection we'd read next, whether the meatloaf in the dining room was worth risking, who was winning the ongoing bridge tournament between the second-floor residents. Gradually, Eleanor began to bloom like my jade plant. She started joining our breakfast group, tentatively at first, then with more confidence as Frank and Mrs. Patterson welcomed her with their particular brand of gentle teasing. She had opinions about the mystery novels that were sharper than mine, and a wicked sense of humor about the staff's attempts to make institutional food appetizing. Watching her transformation reminded me of my own. We'd both arrived here broken, discarded by children who'd convinced themselves they were doing the right thing. We'd both spent weeks mourning the families we'd lost, the lives we'd left behind. But slowly, we were building something new. Not family, exactly, but something precious nonetheless. A chosen community of people who saw value in each other, who celebrated small joys and weathered small sorrows together. I was mentoring Eleanor the way I'd once mentored Sarah, but the difference was striking. Eleanor appreciated my guidance without resenting it. She asked for advice without making me feel intrusive. She shared her own wisdom without competing with mine. This was what healthy relationships looked like, I realized. Give and take. Mutual respect. Genuine affection that didn't come with strings attached. Sarah's letter was still sitting in my desk drawer, unanswered. Every few weeks, she'd send another one, shorter, less apologetic, more frustrated. Then came the emails. Then the text started up again, though less frequently than before. She was growing desperate, I could tell. The sweet, repentant daughter act wasn't working, so she was cycling through different approaches. Guilt, I can't believe you're willing to throw away our entire relationship over money. Anger, you're being vindictive and cruel, and it's hurting the grandchildren. Manipulation. Dad would be so disappointed in you for abandoning your family like this. That last one should have hit harder. My ex-husband had been a worthless deadbeat who'd abandoned us both, but Sarah had always idealized him in a way that broke my heart. For her to invoke his memory as a weapon against me showed just how desperate she'd become. But instead of pain, I felt something like pity. She was so convinced that I'd eventually cave, that my love for her would override my self-respect, that she kept trying the same tired tactics that had worked for so long. What she didn't understand was that I'd finally learned the difference between love and enabling. I loved Sarah, I'd always love her. But I didn't owe her my dignity, my security, or my peace of mind. I thought about the little girl in the Navy uniform, the one who'd trusted me to take care of everything while she grew up safe and protected. I'd done that job. I'd raised her, educated her, supported her, and launched her into a successful adult life. That little girl was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. But I was still here. Older, yes. Frailier, maybe. But still capable of growth, still deserving of respect, still valuable beyond what I could provide for others. My jade plant had taught me that. Eleanor had reinforced it. My new friends at Sunrise Manor proved it every day. I took Sarah's letter out of my drawer one last time, read it slowly, and then did something I'd never done before. I threw it away. Not in anger. Not in hurt. Just in acceptance. I wasn't hard to love. I'd just been giving my love to someone who didn't know how to hold it without crushing it. If you're still with me, listening to this story, then you understand something important. Love isn't supposed to hurt this much. Family isn't supposed to feel like walking on broken glass. Being a good parent doesn't mean accepting abuse from your children just because you raised them. You can love your family deeply, completely, forever, and still choose peace when they stop choosing you. I spent 74 years believing that my worth was measured by how much I could give, how much I could sacrifice, how much I could endure in the name of love. I spent decades making excuses for bad behavior, absorbing cruelty, and convincing myself that this was what good mothers do. But good mothers also model self-respect. They show their children what healthy boundaries look like. They demonstrate that love is not a transaction, that families are built on mutual care, not exploitation. Sarah may never understand that. She may go to her grave believing that I was the problem, that I was too needy, too demanding, too much trouble. She may tell my grandchildren that their grandmother was selfish and cruel, that she abandoned the family over money. That used to terrify me, the thought that I'd be remembered as the villain in my own daughter's story. But now I know something more important. I don't have to live down to other people's narratives about me, even if those people are my own children. I know who I am. I know what I've given. I know what I've endured. And I know what I deserve. I deserve to wake up in the morning without anxiety about whether my phone will ring. I deserve to have conversations that don't revolve around someone else's needs. I deserve to feel valued for who I am, not what I can provide. I deserve peace. And if you're watching this because you recognize yourself in my story, because you have a child or a parent or a spouse who treats you like an option while expecting you to treat them like a priority, then you deserve peace too. The jade plant on Eleanor's windowsill is still growing. New leaves appear every few weeks, small and perfect and strong. It doesn't grow because we beg it to, or because we sacrifice everything for it, or because we lose ourselves trying to make it happy. It grows because it's receiving consistent, healthy care from people who appreciate what it brings to the room. That's all any of us really need. Not grand gestures or dramatic declarations of love. Just steady, honest care from people who value our presence in their lives. You are not hard to love. You just gave your love to someone who didn't know how to hold it. And that's their loss, not yours. Now, if this story touched something in you, if it helped you feel less alone or gave you permission to choose yourself for once, do me a favor. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me about your own journey toward peace. Let's build a community of people who understand that love doesn't require martyrdom. Hit that like button not for me, but for everyone who's still struggling to believe they're worthy of respect. Subscribe so you don't miss more stories about finding strength in unexpected places. Because your story isn't over yet. And maybe, just maybe, the best chapters are still waiting to be written. Thank you for listening. Thank you for seeing me, not as someone's failed mother, but as a woman who finally learned to see herself. Now go water your own jade plants, literal or metaphorical. They're waiting for someone who knows their worth.